Hi, I'm Marty Thacker and I love this life. I was born in Flora, Illinois, which is 60 miles southwest of here. When I was a young 7-year-old, we moved to Oblong, Illinois, which is 9 miles west of here. Then after I thought I was growing up anyway, and I got a job in Robinson. I didn't like having to get up early in the morning to drive 10 miles to work, so I moved to Robinson so I could be to work in a couple minutes, and I've lived here ever since. Raised my kids here. It's a great community, very rural, as you know, and not a whole lot of people have ever seen us race, but they all seem to be very supportive.
So are you like the most famous person from Oblong, Illinois?
I am not even close. Anybody who's an NBA fan, one of my older son's classmates who used to hang out here at the house some is named Myers Leonard, who is a 7'1" player for the Miami Heat now. He played at Portland Trailblazers for years, but he plays power forward and very successful big man in the NBA. So Myers has his name up at the city limits. Also, if I was a literary person, I could tell you the famous author that is from Robinson, and maybe even more famous than either of those is the Heath Candy Bar. The Heath family was from Robinson. The original Heath Candy Bar factories were here. It's now a Hershey factory after the family sold. But they still make the Heath Candy Bar and many of Hershey's chocolate products here in Robinson, as well as the Marathon Refinery, which gave me a lot of my racing budget over the years.
Tell me a little bit about Marathon. How'd you wind up there, and how far did you go?
Well, both my mother and father's family were farming families, but my mother's father and older brother went to work for Marathon as production people, pumping wells and keeping the crude oil coming out of the ground back when this was a pretty good producing area. So when I was 7, my dad left Ashland Oil Company and came to work for Marathon here at the refinery in Robinson. The refinery is one of the oldest in the nation. It was built in 1908. It's been in continuous operation since under different names, but process around 265,000 barrels of crude oil every day. And it's very efficient. It's high on EPA's Energy Star list. It's a great place to work. So I back up to my junior year in high school. My dad said, "Are you going to go to college or are you going to keep fiddling with cars?" And I said, "Well, I'd rather fiddle with cars." So he and I went in and bought a service station in Oblong, which was a Marathon branded station, but I had my service bay that I rebuilt a lot of carburetors, mounted tires, did a little bit of everything there. And as the gas crunch of the early 80s hit, that wasn't a very good way to make a living, and I got a chance to get on at the refinery. So Dad was still working there, and then I was working there, and between the two of us we kept the station running, plus I was farming on the side. Pretty busy time of life, but it kind of got things set up for years to come. So I worked there 36 years and blessed to ever had the job, and recommend it to anybody. I retired a year ago from the refinery, 36 years, and it was still a great job. It's just that after 36 years, I wasn't appreciative enough of it and thought there was some young man out there or young lady that probably would be. I'd worked into a position that was very good for racing as far as having flexibility. It served us well. I was, God lined things up for me. I wasn't ever that good to do most of the stuff that I got to do, but it lined up well, and my wife still works there. She's actually working from home for there now, so I'm now a home contractor for her, and trying to help some of the family. So
you didn't know what you would do with all that idle time that you got, right?
Yeah, that honey-do list will get you every time when you retire. So we still have the racing stuff sitting out here that we're trying to decide what to do with, and had some family medical stuff to go through, and I'm getting caught up on stuff a little bit. I hope soon to, if not get to race, at least to come visit at the races.
Well, as you told me, you now have a motorhome, so no real excuse not to go hang out at the racetrack.
Yeah, the semi got pushed outside. The motorhome's sitting in the semi spot here where we always load our tools in and out at, but it's I would rather show up the racetrack in the Kenworth, but if we have to show up in the motorhome, well, as long as I get to see the people, because after 35 years of racing, I sure miss driving the car, working on the car, the machinery and all that, but what I kind of learned, what all makes all that is the people and the friends, and I miss them dearly. Sometimes I've thought about going to the races and haven't, because I'm afraid I'll just be that much more upset when I leave, but we've had pretty good roll of it. So just to make sure it's clear, you retired from marathon, but you have not necessarily retired from racing. Well, I hope not. One of the benefits of staying at Marathon was that paycheck that they send every 2 weeks, and that ended up being our racing budget the last several years. We went through the rich times of in 2002 we got our first real sponsorship, what I'll call a paycheck handed to you sponsorship from Phillips Service Company. And then a year later, as some of their management left and went to a different company, we switched and had the 2-year sponsorship with Matrix Service Company, and we built our inventory. I bought this property in 2000. We built this shop solely for a race shop. The semi, the race car, everything was inside. For many years, I kept everything else out. If it wasn't to do with the racing, I didn't let it in. Spend the night over here, but in the last few years there's some lawn mowing equipment and stuff in the back end, but we were doing what we wanted to do, and then it looked like we hit some tough times there about 2006, and the mother of my first 2 kids and I decided that we couldn't do it anymore, and filed for divorce. At the same time, the dragster I had sold to a guy that wanted to put a Lenco drive in it, and I'd already ordered all the Lenco drive stuff from Mick and Larry Snyder and had the car tore apart, putting the stuff in to convert it over to a converter car. I had ordered a new funny car from Mike Spitzer. And then the divorce decision came. At the same time, the guy called me up and backed out of buying the car. I had money going down that road. Everything looked like it was coming to a screeching halt. And out of the blue, I had met him from the UDRA days, but Evan Knoll called me one morning at work and said, "I hear you may be done racing." And I said, "Well, yeah, things are looking pretty bad from a financial end and a marital end and everything else." And he said, "No, you're the kind of guy that needs to be out there racing. What's it take to keep you going?" And that started the 3-year Torco deal, which, has some bad stamps on it, but I believe it was a guy with a big heart that maybe made a lot of mistakes, but he loved drag racing, and he helped a lot of drag racers, so it bailed us out, and we had some great years then with the Torco colors on the car. So, but since then it's been spending our savings, which luckily we had put some back from those good years, and then after that it was the paycheck, and it was starting to dig into my family's money, and they've been so supportive over the years. Time, money, travel, this family put up with so much, and really never complained. I mean, yeah, the yard needs mowed. You need to do that before you go back to the shop tonight or whatever. But it was always very supportive, and I wasn't going to ended up leaving them in the hole at the end of it. So until we find a better way to support it, we're probably parked for a while.
Well, let's back up in history just a little bit. You didn't just one day climb into a Top Alcohol car. What was your first ride down the racetrack?
Well, it all started back on a tractor with the AM radio on the fender and listening to US 30 drag strip commercials. That was the first thing I knew about drag racing. And so then I would go to the local drugstore in town and buy the popular hot rodding magazine, whatever had the dragster picture on the cover. And then when I was in junior high, my sister started dating a guy that had a 1970 Chevelle with an LS6 and a 4-speed in it. And he took me to the local bracket track at Terre Haute a couple times. And then lo and behold, my senior year in high school, a guy moved to Oblong, Illinois, which is where I lived. Had just bought the gas station, was working on cars, thinking I wanted them, but he had a old funny car and an old Top Fuel car. And I was down there asking where the broom was. I want to sweep your floors, because that was as close I'd ever been to a real race car. So Rex come from a racing family, mostly from Lawrenceville, Illinois, down here where George Field was located. Old wartime airstrip. They turned into a drag strip for years, and the original home of the World Series of Drag Racing, for a lot of people didn't know, before it went to Alton and then ended up in Cordova. But
so Rex is Rex Stevens.
Rex Stevens lives over by Brazil now, but still has a nostalgia front engine dragster. But I started crewing on Rex's car. We spent that first winter building a new Top Alcohol funny car. Bought a mold, laid up our own body with the help of Joe Godwin down in Fort Branch. Jerry Dawson in St. Louis built that chassis. We went and raced it for a few years. He had that old nitro funny car sitting in the corner, so I took it, mounted a Ford 9-inch in it, and bought a T-bucket from Mike Spitzer Enterprises, and that's the red car on the wall you see in a couple places. Started out with an injected small block Chevy, and then there was a bunch of old iron Hemi parts laying in the corner. I asked him if I could play with, so I put together a 392 with an 871 on it, direct drive, and we played with it when we weren't racing the funny car. But I decided it was time to build our own, so in '87 I sold my T-bucket and had Larry Leitz, north of Terre Haute, used to be up around Chicago, helped me build a Top Alcohol Dragster. And I started out with an iron 354 Hemi, which didn't last long. Everybody knows they split the cylinder walls horribly. Then I bought a Donovan with iron heads, and then we bought aluminum heads, and then we got with Halcanode and got billet heads, and we raced several years and wore that car out. It was shot. Started out with an enclosed cockpit. We took it off because it was breaking, folding up on me at half track, coming in the roll cage with me and all. So we used the car till it wasn't ready to use anymore. So Halcanode said, I've got an idea, why don't we build a new car and you can drive it and I'll tune it. So we did that for a year, and then I bought the rest of that car from him and ran that car, which is the gold leaf body panels hanging on the wall. I wouldn't go throw them away with that gold leaf on them. In '95 through 2001, that car we won 5 UDRA national championships with. And it was a blast. We had a lot of fun. We raced with Lou Novotny, Dave Weber, Tony Zizzo was still driving at the earlier years, and then TJ Zizzo. For a while they had 2 cars. They hauled in one trailer, but I raced TJ a lot in those years. Evan Knoll raced at that time. A lot of guys taught me a lot. we used to go down to Owensboro, Kentucky once a year, the 8-mile track about as wide as this rubber mat here. And we weren't as fast as the big NHRA alcohol cars were. But everywhere we went with that UDRA circuit, pretty much packed the house. And we would go down there, and Rooster was the track owner's name. Her name's Evelyn Miller. Everybody calls her Rooster, and if you watch American Pickers about a year ago, she was on selling some of her dad's stuff out of the old Country and Western Museum down there at Owensboro. But she always came out and she said, guys, don't do anything crazy. They just want to see some smoke and hear a lot of noise. Just do a big burnout and leave and shut them off. And every run almost, we were off the end of the track into the cornfield because we were all so competitive, and we didn't care that we weren't spending the money that the NHRA Top Fuel guys were or anybody else. We just wanted to race. And we were at the final one year. We were in TJ in the final, and Zizzo had a 001 light, and I was 000.
Wow.
And we both went off the end of the field and jumped out of the cars in the cornfield and asked each other who won, and we beat him. But it was just a great time. Most of them were one-day races. You go out and one-shot qualify and have eliminations later that night, and it was usually 1 in the morning time you were done. But I learned so much on those tracks. I mean, we ran Martin, Michigan, and Columbus, and some nice tracks too. But we got out there on tracks that you had to be ready at all times. And really, the first pass I made in a screw car in the NHRA setup car, we were in the other car at NHRA events too, but it was, I don't want to insult anybody, I won't say disappointing, but I was really surprised at how slow things happened, because you were way out before you ever shifted out of first gear compared to the low gear ratio of the Roots car and all, and it just wasn't as jerky, violent, quick acting that the little Roots car had to be competitive. But we won our first NHRA race in 1993, the Citrus Nationals, which was a Winter Series event, which it was like, my life's now complete. Now this is all I needed to do. And then in 2000, we won a NHRA points meet, Montgomery, Alabama, Division II race. Beat all screw blower cars in that race with our little Roots blower. And I'll never forget, I hope he doesn't mind me telling that, but Jim Collins, who was the tech director in Division II, came over to the pits afterwards and got teary-eyed, saying, you know, how proud he was of us, that he knew that one day we would do it. And later that year, there's a video going around on Facebook right now that we took that Roots car to the final against Dave Hirata at St. Louis at the Craftsman Nationals. So it was just like we were wringing all we could out of that car. We went 569 was the quickest we ever got it to go, which was the quickest Roots car at the time. And 2002, the sponsorship deal came up, and Billy Bybee had a Brad Hadman screw and blow car together, or completely together for sale, and we were able to, through some payments that Billy let us do and stuff, we were able to buy a 1-year-old NHRA ready to go car, and things got a lot faster from then.
So when you were talking about Hal Canode, I remember back in the day, back at Coles County Dragway, I think you and him may have done a match race up there?
We did. We hauled our cars across the old pipe bridge there, pulling into Coles County, and the only time I'd ever been there before that was with the 74 Grand Prix, I think, when I was 16 years old. But we went in there, and Hal and I did a little match race at Coles County. I took Hal down to Ashland, Kentucky one time for a match race, and then the next year took Lou Novotny with me, to a track owner down there that I got to having a yearly deal with. And yeah, I mean, it's always fun to go to all races. I'll, you know, if the road out front here was flat and the police didn't mind, well, we'd find something to line up against your car. But it's just, some of these smaller tracks just were so appreciative, and the people were just, to open their eyes of what, you know, some of the horsepower that's out there was just, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I still like to do the national events and the U.S. Nationals, obviously, but some of the match racing stuff and what you got to experience there between rocks on the track and everything else, it was an experience. Always had fun. I don't, you know, I don't think I ever went to the racetrack I didn't have fun. I can think of a couple times we never got to race due to weather. Rain just never quit and getting sent home. But I think I still had fun. You know, the car could stay in the trailer, and as long as the racers were there, that was a lot of the drive from the beginning. I mean, I wanted to be like Rex when I first met Rex, and somebody that knew something about racing, and because I did not come from a racing background. My family was farmers, and you're wasting your money, get away from that. The first 2 races my dad came to was to tell me not to quit it, that I was wasting money and I was going to get hurt, which were the first 2 with the alcohol car I was still actually licensing, which was fall of 1987. The first race, he stood back and gave me a dirty look the whole time we were going, and I say race, licensing, which was at Terre Haute. We just needed 1/8 mile passes. And the second time was for the 1/4 mile passes at St. Louis, the old St. Louis backwards track. And at that race we had some problems, and he was still giving me a dirty look, but he said, hey, if you need an extra hand, I'm over here. And within a year of that, my fiscally responsible father was like, we need a new blower. You need to buy a new blower. And I was like, Dad, I can't afford it. And he said, well, find a way. We gotta go faster. So Dad raced with me for a lot of years. Had a period there where my mom was dying that he had to stop, and then took care of her there for a long time. And then after Mom passed away in 2003, while we were completing the U.S. Nationals, we had to go back a weekend due to rain that year, and when we went back, she died while I was up there, which they all kept it from me. I mean, the crew was in on it and everybody, and Dad was home, and he said, don't tell him till you guys are done. So I think Morgan Lucas beat us in the semifinals, I think, and so that Dad ended up remarried, and my stepmom ended up getting Alzheimer's and stuff, and went through a horrible time, and he took care of her, and then the time that was all over, well, he was he's still here in town. He's 85 now, and he hadn't actively went to too many races here the last few years, but he's still as big a supporter as I got. He spent a lot of hours here in the shop and staying up late, and that competitive drive, he got the bug. Drag racing, it's a terribly addictive thing, and he got it. So,
well, family's been a big part of this all the way through for you, right? Your family is very important.
It has. I mean, I want to say I've missed a lot of stuff, and they gave up a lot of stuff due to it, but we've been so blessed that, you know, we never miss meals. We spend time together, but they usually had to come to the race shop to hang out with me, and that's fine. They were always welcome, but you know, when you have a full-time job and then racing, and racing itself was probably more hours. If I spent 50 hours at work a week, I spent 60 hours out here, and then you're leaving on the Thursday night or Wednesday night, whatever night you gotta leave to get to the track the next day, and you're home Sunday night or Monday morning, and time to maybe go to bed for a few hours before time to go back to work, and it starts all over. And said Dad and Mitch were the two that my oldest son Mitch were the two that went to most of the races with me, but all the family has been behind me all the way, and I can't thank them enough for that. they're still here today, so it's good. We've had a lot of people wanted to sacrifice their time and knuckles and everything else to come race and help me in the shop and ride all night. And everybody that knows me, I never got to the track too early. We usually worked as long as we could because I only had so much vacation time, and you know, none of our crewmen ever got a dime as far as a paycheck. It didn't matter how many hours they worked or whatever, and I never had any complaints. But we had Rex and my dad, and then later Dan Fuller was kind of my right-hand man. Larry Hunsaker has been for years now. Larry's from from Lawrenceville, down the road here, and Larry's one of them guys. He can do anything. If you show him something and give him a little bit to study it, well, it will be fixed. And he's the guy that if I go drive another car, I take with me. If I go drive the diesel car, or go out west and drive a car, part of my deal is, yeah, you got to pay Larry to come too, because that's my safety net. And Dan and Dad were those guys before Larry. But you just, somebody, when you get in one of these cars, you can't be worrying about the car. You can't be scared. You can't have your mind wander off anything but the job at hand, because then you get hurt or then you tear stuff up. And it's, when Larry was there, I don't want to say I had no fear, but I didn't think about it. It was, he is not going to let me go down this track unless it's safe. And there was a time that I knew something was wrong with the car after backing up from the burnout, and I didn't share it on the radio or anything. And after the end of the run, and we got back to the, actually I guess when we were getting ready to pull back, I told him the car had no brakes, and I thought he was going to beat me to death with his baseball cap. He was he was mad. Don't you ever do that again. But, and I didn't. But you know, Jerry Hansen here the last few years, Sam Cooper travels all the way from South Carolina up here to help us. Bob Wright from over at Greenville, if you know Boomer, everybody knows Boomer. Jim Bailey years back. We just blessed with not only good crewmen but good friends, you know.
We see the car here, and the car did its job, but well, tell me a little bit about that day and what happened. In decades of racing, I don't recall ever going in to a race a day early to test. Not that we didn't want to. I would drive this car 7 days a week if that was available, but it was always vacation days versus getting all the crew off for their vacation or whatever. Getting there, maybe some family obligations, maybe one of the kids had a ball game the night before, so we didn't leave a day early. But that was the last race of 2018 for us, and I think we all kind of knew that it was going to be tough to race much the next year, because we all had family obligations, and we're all getting grandkids, and money was being stretched where it wouldn't stretch anymore. And it just, I don't know if that was it or what, but we all decided that we could take that extra day off for a change and go into St. Louis a day early and test. And I had some things I was wanting to try with the fuel system, just yeah, that's one thing about these things. There's always something you want to try, and it's not something that I could ever, it was a big enough change, I wouldn't do it during qualifying and take a chance on not qualifying. So it had been a bad year. We weren't going to win the championship, but it doesn't matter. Every race is a new deal for us, so I wanted to win it. And so we got there a day early Wednesday night. We unloaded on Thursday, took our time, went up for the first test session, and the car left nice. A lot of people think I don't set it up right, but it left about the way I set it up to leave, which was front end was 3-4 inches off the ground. Wasn't super high, but it was 100% weight transfer.
and it just started a slow drift to the right. And I just told myself, well, let's shut it off, go back, look at the data, come back and do it again. There's no use driving this thing over close to the wall or anything. And I thought I'd told myself to pick my foot up. But according to the computer, it happened right before. But the left rear wheel broke in two. Just all I knew was about the time I picked my foot up, it was like I hit a patch of ice. The back end just came around my left side, and the more I steered into it, the angrier it got. And I reached over and hit the brakes a little bit, and there was nothing there. The handle just came all the way back. I didn't know when the wheel broke, it shattered the carbon fiber brake rotor, and so there was nothing between the pucks. Come around, steering was against the lock. There was no more steering to be done, so it hit the right wall doing about 130 mile an hour. That's what did most of the damage. Of course, the front wing, all the front nose crumpled. It swung back around and then reversed again and come back around the same direction, hit the wall again, slapped the car away, I guess, or bounced the car away and fell over on its right side and slid the rest of the quarter mile on the right side. I hate it. I wish it had never happened from what it did to the car and everything, and my family, even though you're calling them saying I'm okay, I mean, everybody went through a lot of stress over it, and it messed up some nice stuff, but it was very interesting. It was slow motion, like y'all hear. I've never had a bad wreck before, so it was a new experience for me. I remember watching the asphalt going by my head, thinking, yep, that's where that is. Yeah, that's what's happening here. And I remember seeing the wall coming every time and saying, I wonder if this is going to hurt. What's this going to do? And watching the front end bend, and just, I never got a bruise. Mike Spitzer builds a car that way on purpose. We don't have the lightest cars out there. If the driver does his job at the dinner table and everything else, we can say down the minimum, but it's tough. But Mike will not build a car that's going to prematurely hurt you. I mean, there's always circumstances, but I come out of it. I didn't have a bruise, a skin, a ache. I've had a couple instances where we've let a wheelie down too hard or something, and I've been, after the adrenaline comes off, I've been sore. I didn't have the first physical injury from that wreck, but it might have been the straw that broke the camel's back. I don't know how we come back now with our own team. So,
what does that do to your psyche, to your thought process about driving the car again?
Let's go. I'm ready. I got in Gino Tamburello's car a month later. I went to Vegas, and Larry and I went to Vegas and tried to run Gino's car, which when I got there, I found out I was bigger than anybody that car was ever designed, and I was not comfortable in it. From a sitting standpoint, I never had an issue of, I don't know if I want to do this again or not. I ain't too smart, for one thing. And I've got some pretty fantastic heroes. I mean, the people that got me really wanting to do well at this, the Danny Townsends of the world, the Rex Stevens, you know, Earl Datweiler, the guys that I started chasing and emulating and wanting to be like. It just, I saw Danny Townsend go through some stuff, you know, and Danny can't do it anymore, and maybe I can't either, but he would if he could. I know he would. And it didn't ever really have that effect. Like I said, it didn't hurt. It was interesting. It was financially painful. My son was there watching from the starting line, which I had to get to him as soon as possible just to prove to him. I think even when I was
jogging toward him, he still wasn't sure. I mean, just the look on his face that I was okay. And then I'd never take my phone out of the trailer when we race, so Larry hands me his phone, says you need to call Karen right away and tell her you're okay before she gets somebody calls, say, hey, we're Marty just. So of course she sees a phone call coming from one of my crewmen on her caller ID and immediately gets scared. So sure. Even when I try not to mess up, I mess up. But yeah, we're ready to go should the opportunity present. I'd love to get in the car.
It just won't be
alcohol, funny car, alcohol dragster, either one. Somebody got a top fuel ride, and I'll upgrade my license. But yeah, these things, I get scared driving around Walmart, and in my pickup truck. There's some dangerous people out there. But like I told you yesterday, I was cutting flooring for my wife's bathroom, and I hurt myself worse than this thing hurt me in a wreck. So I'm this car is bent front half, back half, and roll cage. It slid down the wall, the roll cage got up against the wall, which is really the only thing wrong with the main section of the car. But this original car was a 2009 Spitzer, 290-inch chassis. The body is still the original 2009. We raced it all 10 seasons. It's been front half and back half. I have a spare front half. I have 2 spare front halves leaning against wall out there that I could put back on it. Back halves, I don't have anything I'd want to put back on it, but Spitzer could do that in a day or two. If we come back out with our own car, it'll be a brand new chassis probably. Mike has offered to look to see what he can save on it, and I think the best thing to do is one of these days we're going to hang it up here in the rafters and remember that good Lord watches after us.
So Karen is supportive of what you do. Tell me about Karen.
Karen and I met at work. She was an accountant at the time at the refinery, and we were on the same area team, and slowly became friends before we became anything else. And after I lived down here the bachelor life for a while, I have all the trophies that are out here. Used to be in the house with all the NHRA trophies. When Karen came, I had to make sacrifices. I moved half the trophies out of the house, but our dining room wall still covered in auto imagery, national event win collages, some magazine covers from U.S. national wins and stuff. So we will be married 10 years in July. When I got ready to retire, which she's a little younger and doesn't have the years of service in yet, and not as cranky as I am, she was, you got the numbers figured out, you can do it, go do it. And I said, well, I realize I'm probably going to have to, forget about racing. And she said, I don't know why. She said, make a budget, stick to it. And I said, no. I can't do it the way that I was able to do it for a while on the kind of budget that I could put forward. And one thing that racing teaches you is have the best, buy the best, spend a little more, get the best. Between our cylinder heads and our race cars and our connecting rods and crankshafts and trucks and trailers and tires and everything else, I turned down quite a bit of free stuff over the years because it wasn't what I thought was going to win a race, or the most races, or the race in the best way, or to make the car go as fast as the car wanted to go. And it's just, there's just no substitute for quality when you're trying to do what these teams are trying to do. So I couldn't afford to do that on the kind of budget that she had mine, and I don't know that she ever really worried herself with how much money we actually spent. But and the deal was kind of, you know, as long as the house payment's made and you know, we can afford to put food on the table, we're doing well, you know. So she's over in the house right now, still working for a living, and I call her my sugar mama, but I'm still making the house payment and all that out of what was left. We were lucky enough to save some of our marathon money over the years, not spend it all toward the racing deals, so we're doing okay. But so we got the motorhome now, and all those signs that for 35 years I drove by in Suburban or the Top Kick, or last several years in the Kodiak or the Kenworth, and saying, yeah, that looks cool, I'm gonna go there someday. Well, most state parks and Mount Rushmore and Smoky Mountains don't have room for an 85-foot race rig to pull in and turn around or stop, and if we had time to do it. So now we got a motorhome, and we're going to see some of the natural beauty this country offers.
A lot of Top Alcohol Dragster combinations are really A-fuel cars anymore, but you never went that way. You stayed with blown alcohol.
Rex Stevens took me to my first NHRA Division III event, first divisional event, national event period I went to in 1981 at Indianapolis Raceway Park. That's what it was called back then. I watched Bob Godchalk win Alcohol Funny Car. I believe maybe Brian Raymer won Alcohol Dragster. I couldn't believe that these big old wide valve cover Hemi engines were revving up like that, and obviously nothing like they rev them today, or like we even revved them a few years back. But it was amazing to me that you could take that kind of iron, aluminum, steel obviously, but and sling it like that. That was also a race that I sat and watched Danny Townsend with his Bantam altered with the injected big block. I believe Danny won that weekend, but it was I already knew who he was, but he really impressed me and became one of my favorites that weekend. But to this day, if somebody said, we will give you a world-class operation of the class of your picking and money to run it for 10 years, I really would want to run the blown alcohol deal and over Top Fuel or Fuel Funny Car. The inner struggle with me would be where to go with thoroughbred dragster that served me so well, or to jump in the funny car that I've always wanted to. The funny car has always been alluring, and I think probably that in my mind the alcohol funny car is the hardest car to drive in all of drag racing, followed by probably the alcohol dragster or the fuel funny car. They're two different animals. Everybody will tell you, well, the funny car, you got to steer it so much more. I'll say, yeah, you jump in the dragster and drive like that, you're going to be on your lid. You can't compare them side by side because it's just two different things, and I'd probably find that out should I try to switch. But Bill Reichert, who is my nemesis for many years, Bill and I think ran more than anybody else for either one of us over the years, between all the regional meets and national meets and everything. And I lost track years ago. Head to head, he either beat me by one or I beat him by one, and someday I'm gonna go find the records, but I can't. Drag Race Central doesn't go back far enough on my computer, so Bill and I raced a lot, and after he crashed the blown car a couple times and went A-fuel racing a couple years, I was dropping a block off with him to have repaired one PRI show. And we were alone in a parking garage, taking it out of my pickup into his, and he told me I need to switch. He said, it's so much easier to drive. And I said, Bill, don't you get it? That's what I'm here for. I just, very seldom do I do it right. And most times I get to the other end and I should have shifted just a hair later, or I should have kept it in the groove better, or you know, I didn't leave quite right, or there's so many things in the blown car that the driver has to do, or the run is not going to be what it should be. And the few runs that I did it right, that's as high as I've ever been on this earth. I was with my heroes at that point. I was doing what I saw Danny Townsend do and these guys, and that's what drove me. And I don't think there's another car in drag racing that goes that fast. And no doubt the pro stock cars have the things to do too, with the shifting and the leaving at RPM and all that, and dropping the clutch pedal. But to go this fast and get to do all those things, that's the alcohol classes, and that's where I would spend the rest of my life, should it, you know, present itself, in case Drag Racer TV wants to sponsor anybody.
Well, if Drag Racer TV had the money, it'd be bannered across the side, trust me. You've had a reputation as being one of the most aggressive alcohol combinations in the country. I mean, a wheels up start, if you're not leaving with the wheels in the air, it's almost like something's wrong with this car.
I always felt like the advantage of the big long car was a pry bar on the back tires, and if you weren't using 100% of it, you were leaving something on the table. And the best runs we ever had, the car always had the front end up some. Now I know at times we overdid it, we missed our gas, it got way higher than it should, it shook the tires because it was unloading the back tires on the wheelie bar. I tell you, I didn't do it right most of the time. Once in a while we got everything right, and more times than not the car saved us. But yeah, I mean, we went to Las Vegas in 2003 and broke the track record early in qualifying. Dwayne Shields had just switched to A-Fuel with Steve Boggs and all, and he ended up resetting it before the weekend was over. But 4 out of our 5 runs, it carried the front end to half track. And you know, you can't blame it on Spitzer, because that was a Brad Hadman car, the car I bought from Billy Bybee. And we were having a blast. Everybody told us Vegas was so hard to run, and we're like, this ain't bad. We had a lot more trouble figuring out Pomona than we had Vegas, but in the final, the car carried the front end about 800 foot down the track. I had to pedal it in high gear because it still hadn't set the front end down, and it was getting way too close to the wall. And I pedaled it, and of course when I did that, knocked the clutch loose a little bit and slowed down to 37, I think, and Dwayne Shields nipped me at the finish line. And you know, it's kind of the way we wanted to race, and yeah, I've lost a lot of races because we were too aggressive. But for years in UDRA, we won. There was a 6-year period there that we won our 5 championships with. We won 75% of the races. And about the 3rd or 4th year into that, I was laying back on the starting line, letting guys red light against me and everything, because we had the fastest car there. Those were close. You know, Dave Weber always had a competitive car. A lot of good racers there, Hal Canode, Lou Novotny, but we had a program going, and we won the Xenia, Ohio race one night, and one of the guys slapped the tow strap on the front of the dragster, and I jumped on the tailgate of the Suburban, and he
stomped his way into the car, and we started towing back toward the winner's circle, and everybody had a frown on their face. And I looked around and I said, we're the sorriest bunch of winners I ever seen. This is all we ever wanted out of a racing experience, and look at us. We just won another race. You know, it just don't get any better. The car was in one piece, we were all in one piece. And the next race out, I was shooting for that 010 light again. And we were pressing the envelope, and we weren't laying back. We were seeing how fast that race car would go on that racetrack. And we were smiling again. And unless, you know, to go out and win because you can, just never seemed to be the motivating force we needed. We needed to go find out how fast this race car will go today, and how good can this driver react. And you know, you know, I've got 40 some NHRA trophies in the house. Love them. I love my coats more. I wear my coats all winter. People get tired of me everywhere I go. I got a national event coat on, or a regional championship coat on, and I love my coats probably more than my trophies. All the UDRA trophies and stuff, and coats from there, and the 5 Second Club from UDRA. We were the first 5 Second Club member, and you know, it was how we got them that was satisfying for us. That was that thing that we look back and that smile creeps onto your face, you know.
When we're talking like this or in the pit area, you're a very nice, soft-spoken guy.
That's an act.
When you strap the helmet on, you're different.
I agree with the statement that we're friends until we pull up to the starting line. And that only goes so far. I don't know how to explain it. If you're in the other lane, if my wife's in the other lane, I ain't laying down. I'm gonna, you know, I want to beat you so bad. I don't want you to tear up your stuff. I don't want to see you get hurt. I said, these are my heroes. So many of these people have the qualities that I want to take upon myself in life, and they're good people. Very few people in the drag racing world I've met that I didn't think that I wanted to stay in touch with, be friends with.
Who inspires you? Who do you look to and say, I'd like to be like that guy?
I said Danny definitely was one of my heroes when I was starting out and putting stuff together wrong and going out there and probably making a fool of myself. He came over one time at Topeka and showed me how to rebuild a barrel valve and how I ought to be cleaning the poppets every single weekend, and taught me stuff that I still used the last day we raced. I mean, I remember Earl Datweiler and Don Duvall and Mike Koski, Don Blackshear. These guys, when we started racing with Rex, and then when I first started dragging my old iron-headed Donovan to the NHRA race to see if I could even come close to qualifying. And I'm not even talking about going down the racetrack. I'm talking about the way they conducted themselves getting ready, the camaraderie, the characters. I'm still scared today to drive through Kentland, Indiana, that Don DeVault might get a hold of me. You know, that guy, he's a little weird. Earl Datweiler one time at Brainerd come over, and we were running them Sunday, second round at the national event. So when we got up out of bed Sunday morning and walked out, we had all these T&E t-shirts and caps hanging from our awning. So we took them. We kept them. I still have some of them. We hid them because he came back to get them later and we didn't have them. But in the meantime, we made a big sign out of this, one of these whiteboards you lay under the car that said,
T&E trailers were giving away free t-shirts and coats to everyone who asked today, and put it down on the corner of the pit area and he was getting all these people coming by for their free t-shirts and hats and coats. He finally went and found the sign and took it down. But you know, it's to be a part of that after watching these other guys do that, and it definitely adds to the car experience. It's the people. Like I said, it's, if I never get to drive one of these again, or to be part of one going down a track again or anything, I'm going to survive. I had a good run of it. And there are other things in life. I got to get land here and the motorhome and a great family and grandkids now. There's stuff that I can will make me smile, but I don't ever want to lose touch with most of those people, because people's what make drag racing what it is.
Of all the things that you look back on, what's your biggest accomplishment?
The 2 U.S. Nationals wins. I mean, we won 5 UDRA titles. We won 5 NHRA regional titles, 1 with Division II, and then 4 of them with Division III. And those were all, except the last one in the Bill Reichert heyday and stuff. So I mean, it was some good competition in there that you know, we're going to miss a lot of those guys. I think Bill had a birthday this week, so happy birthday, Bill. We won the All-Stars twice. We were the first alcohol-powered car. I believe it was 2004 at the Joliet race. That's when they were having the All-Stars at the Fall Joliet race. The 2 national events there. The race before, Mike Gunderson had broke 280 in the A-Fuel car. And in the semifinals of the All-Star race, I broke 270. Was the first alcohol car to go 270. And coming up the return road, Mike Gunderson was hanging over the fence saying, "Thanks, Marty, for getting them off my back," you know. So it's still 10 mile an hour, but you don't want to get me into that whole differential. So I think we were the 4th car into the 520s, which happened on that same pass. We always did it with our own way. I ran the Donovan for years. We ran the Roots Blower against the Screws for years. You know, with Total Flow products up in Michigan, we developed a new head. We ran Steve's heads most of that time instead of the conventional California heads. I kind of got a chip on my shoulder over Midwest. If something's made in the Midwest and it's as good or better, I'm going with it. I don't like sending all my money to California, although they make some nice stuff out there too. But
you've climbed in a lot of cars. Tell me about that diesel experience.
The diesel car, I'll tell you, that all started, I kept getting this phone call from a Northern Illinois number up around Elgin, Illinois. And the guy left me a message a couple times. They wanted me to call him back, and he never really told me why. But a guy named Jerry Legod, never heard of him, which shows how dumb I am. But after about 4 attempts, I got a call from Mike Spitzer. I always answer that phone call because there's usually some good idea. Hey, we've come up with something that'll make your car faster. You want, bring it up and we'll put it on there. But I answered the call, and Mike said, "Hey, Jerry Legod called me and he says you're not returning his calls. Would you please return his calls? I gave him your name and I think you need to hook up with him." So I said, "Okay." So I called the guy back and he says, "Well, we got this diesel dragster and Spitzer built it for us." And they'd built it for Jerry's son to drive, who also drove they had a road racing car. They've set Bonneville land speed records. But his son had a relapse of cancer and ended up passing away. And the car'd set for a couple years while they mourned. And then Jerry decided in Max's honor, he was going to get the car out and race it. So Larry and I got the deal. Larry's going with me if we're going. So drive up to Northern Illinois and get fitted in the car and meet the guys and walk through their shop, and they build high performance diesel engines for a living. And when I say they build engines, they don't buy parts and put them together. They build their own turbochargers from the wheels out. They build their own crankshafts, billet crankshafts. Jerry is a retired engineer from International Harvester Company, who my farmer friends told me, I can't believe that you met Jerry Lagarde. He took International Harvester's factory program and put them on top. So what we find we have here is a car that looks almost exactly like this one. It's 300 inches instead of 290. It's got the same carbon fiber one-piece body. Spitzer's put twice as thick and twice as much tubing in it because it holds up this big 6-cylinder triple turbocharged International Harvester engine. And we find it very interesting. We go through some of the stuff. We show up at Joliet one day to test. TJ Zizzo had actually tested the car for him previously one weekend because they didn't have anybody to drive the car, so they friends with the Zizzo family, and actually I guess Zizzo's who gave him my name, but TJ drove it, and I'm trying to remember, TJ went 750 or something in it, and we went out and went 720. And Jerry's like, well, the record's 7.0. And I said, well, we're so far off. We need gear ratios. We need this. I mean, I can tell that, and I don't know anything about tuning your diesel. But so we ended up going out, resetting the diesel world record for mile an hour and ET, which is really all Jerry was for. We won. We were undefeated the first year and a half we raced the car. Racing against a limited amount of cars. Shides have a diesel dragster with the Cummins. John Robinson from Texas. They're spread out quite a bit around the nation, but John Robinson had a funny car for a while. We raced one of the old Schumacher cars he put a diesel in. So, but we ran this thing and lowered the record to 643, I think, at 218. Sounds kind of slow when you're talking about, 520 car, 273. But what you got to realize is this car weighs 2,100 pounds on a bad day when the driver's fat. That car weighs 3,860 pounds. It's like trying to usher a freight train at speed down a slick track, because we had all the top fuel stuff. We had lower gears in a top fuel car. We had 250 gears in the rear end of this thing and a strange 12-inch rear end. A 4-disc 11-inch clutch with all the spring, and you couldn't put steel counterweight on it. We had to make all Mallory counterweight for the clutch, and it still wouldn't lock it up. I mean, Bob Molinari built this clutch special for this thing, and we never could get enough clutch in the car without knocking the tires off early. So it's 3-speed Lenco. Still had a clutch pedal just like the alcohol car, and you still left at RPMs. The problem was this motor, a diesel motor, was 6.5 to 1 compression. It would not stay running when you let the clutch out unless you had the boost up. So it had dual disc brakes on the rear axle. You had to pump the brakes up, pull for all your might, get the engine up to the 5,000 range, 5,200 preferably. Over 50 pound of boost built before you dared let the clutch pedal out any further. But to drive that car was in many ways as challenging as driving a car that goes over a second quicker, because the staging process was so strainful. Is that a word?
It is now.
Strenuous. You had to, you were working both pedals and the brake, and it wasn't like this car. When you bring this car in, once you set the RPM and you keep the clutch pedal pushed against the stop, and if you set the stop right, it's sitting there just barely pulling enough to where all the slack's out of everything. Well, that car, you couldn't do that. You had to start letting the clutch out or it didn't build boost. And if you didn't build boost, it'd just die. So it was a hard car to drive. It was so we ran top fuel tires on it, and it spun the tires all the way down the track. And due to the triple turbos, it didn't make much noise going down the track. It whistled. When it was right, basically all you heard was this air rushing out the 4.5-inch exhaust pipe in a whistle. And you could hear the rear tires groaning going down the racetrack, slipping and groaning. It was one of the oddest things. I'd love to hear this car now with silent exhaust on it after hearing that car. But Jerry Legod and his whole crew from up there, they said they didn't know anything about drag racing, and they pretty much let Larry and I tell them what they needed to do, but they were the ones that knew how to turn the screws. Larry did all the clutch work, and I just kind of tell them, well, the car felt like this, or I think it needs that. But they were the ones that knew what made the diesel breathe. And they said they weren't drag racers, but they were. It was just like hanging around with Harada and you know, Doc and all the NHRA folks that we've come to put up with. So I'll do it again if they ever want to, but their business actually got so busy that they just didn't have time to mess with the car anymore, because half the shop wanted to go to the racetrack when they went racing. So yeah, when you win the U.S. Nationals once, it's, I almost say it got away from me. It slipped away. I didn't really realize until we were home and back to work, and there's no time, just what I'd been blessed with there. That, you know, what we had accomplished, what all the guys and girls fought for there. And we beat my buddy, my brother Dave Harada in the final, which was special. I mean, the weekend before he'd whipped us at Bowling Green, and they were running as good as anybody that time. And you know, if this pandemic thing and lockdown keeps going much longer and I don't get a haircut, I'm gonna look like my older brother Dave. You know, got the little thing going. I have to dye it purple or something. But the second time we won it, more family was there. The first time, the kids had stuff going on, and some of them had been up for a good part of the weekend. Luckily, we lived less than 2 hours from the track here, so a lot of times the kids would come up for 1 or 2 days and then come back. But they were all there that time. If you look at our winter circle pictures, it's like, wow, he's got a big crew. And I do. All the kids were there. The grandson was there. That was when he was a baby, and I appreciated the first win more the second time we won it. It was just, you know, not very many people had done that. Bill Reichert, Rick Santos at the time, and that's pretty good company to hang your hat with. And I don't know that I deserve that, but I'm going to take it.
If you had the opportunity to talk to somebody younger about their life's direction, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, first, take care of your responsibilities, and then take care of your passion. I said, I come from the cornfield. There's 1,700 people in town. When I got to go to town, we lived a couple miles from town, so didn't know a whole lot about drag racing. Probably talked like I thought I did, but this guy moving to our little town was, I think it was my destiny to do. But if you can chase your passion, and I didn't have any business chasing it. I had no money. I had all used parts, and it started so small, and we just kept working. And we worked to take care of our responsibilities first, and then no matter how tired we worked to get that passion and to get that dream. And I'll be daggone if I didn't get it and more. I mean, I never thought about winning an NHRA national event, let alone the U.S. Nationals twice. I never, you know, to win a regional event was kind of far out there in my dream list. to ever get that far. To run a Top Alcohol Dragster was about as far as I even dared dream. And it's one thing about the United States of America, we got a lot of problems, and yeah, we we need to straighten up some politics, and we can all do a better job at what we do every day. But in this country, if you don't mind working, I believe you can get anything you want. I truly do. I said there were several times in this racing program that it looked like it was the end, or we were at least severely taking a step back. And the good Lord presented something and said, hey, if you're willing to work for it, I'm gonna open this door, and we never hesitated to step through. I'm hoping another one opens, because I'm getting itchy sitting at home. I told you earlier, the fire's still burning. It's not the blazing inferno that it probably used to be when I was 30, 40 years old, but I've never found anything that packs the thrill and the satisfaction that drag racing does. I'd like to thank my family, all our friends. We miss you guys. We miss racing, but we miss you folks more. And thank God for this life. It's been great. If I never get to do it again, I didn't deserve what I got. And we're gonna try to see if he'll let us do it some more though. So.